Hello, welcome to the 27th day of January 2022. I'm Kurt, and this is The Good Life. I do this every day, first thing in the morning, to remind myself of my life objectives and principles, to see how I did yesterday, applying these, and then to plan for the coming day. First, yesterday and last night. Nothing significant to report yesterday. It was a very good, solid day of work. However, I did just stumble across, during the course of a walk yesterday with the dogs, a video by the musician Loaf. And hi, Rudy. And it was described as his last video. He died just recently, here in this month actually. And I watched it. Normally I don't watch those types of things. I don't, for example, I have a rule. I don't watch people die. Like if there's a video of showing a gratuitous video showing a plane crash in which someone dies, even if you don't see them die, you see the plane crash. I don't watch that kind of stuff. I do watch historical stuff. Like I'll watch a documentary. I'll watch a documentary about, World War II that might be showing things like the death camps. That I'll do, but I won't watch just, like with a box of popcorn, just for the interest of watching people die. So usually I don't watch something, but something about the title caught my eye. It was something about his last video, and I'm a little bit interested in Meatloaf. Of course, I remember him from Rocky Horror fame, playing Eddie, and I remember his music. I wouldn't call myself necessarily a fan, but I thought it was good. I thought he was very creative, and of course he's a larger than life personality. Now he died in his 70s, and so I watched the video. It's not very long, and it's the kind of video that content creators sometimes make, just to kind of almost like making a video to share with your friends or family about your status. In his status, so he was taking, like, sitting like I am with a camera. He actually had two cameras going, which was interesting, and talking into the camera, talking about his circumstance, his next surgery, and his hopes to recover. Apparently, if the title was correct, this was his last video. I didn't realize that he had suffered so much in his last years. He was in his 70s. I won't go on and on. It wasn't a terrible video or anything like that, other than the fact that clearly this was a man in a lot of pain, wanting to be good again, healthy again, and wanting to, as he said, to rock. And clearly that wasn't going to be. So I was kind of shook by the whole thing after I watched the video. Shook by because there's one of my principles is the horror show. That life is chock full of horrors, and it certainly is. This is just another example of it. And shook by the way that Meat, as he likes to call himself, was dealing with it, struggling with it, as I would too. And then also shook by the context, of knowing that his time was very soon. In the video, he says something like he's got, like, in 3.5 months there'll be no more pain. So I think he knew that. So maybe this was back in the latter part of 2021 when the video was made. So when I got home, I was in my mind. I was thinking, is my house in order? And that's one of my first objective, which is to be always ready to die. How are my relationships, my finances, and whatever art I want to do in life, whatever mission I have, are they in order? Have I lived well? Is there anything yet that I need to do? I'm basically readying myself for the same type of circumstance. Nothing really changed as a result of that, because I I think I am. I think I do have those things in order. Although, what a sobering idea to realize you might be just at months, as we all might be at any time. And what to do with that? What did you do with that time? What would you do if you just had months left? I'm here at this prospect of, at age going on 58, with a prospect of hopefully decades yet. But what if it was just a year? Or what if it was just a half a year? I've got another friend right now that's going through a real horror show. A friend, I would say a friend. It's someone that I know through life. A couple. And they're going through a horror right now as well. And I've reached out and contributed to help them out, as have literally thousands of others. They're the type of people that have a huge community. They're not going to be okay, though. This is the event, the horror show that's happening to them is going to take them out. It's not going to kill them necessarily, but it's going to take out the very good life that they had created for themselves. Not a good life in terms of vast wealth or fame or status or anything like that, but good in terms of they had a good life. I guess I could almost say it in the past tense. I don't see how they could recover from this. Fortunately, there's a way down for them, down to a very sober level of life. They were already coming from a very sober level. How do you descend into more sobriety? I'm thinking of Stilbo the Stoic, right? And the guy I have the T-shirt for. I have all my goods with me. Lost everything, yet still retained what he had. His goods. Everything within him. Okay, well, that's enough of a preamble. So yesterday was actually quite a day then. For work, it was a good day, a solid day at work. Got a lot done. Got the second recording done of the training. I'll edit that and have that to the team before mid-morning. Let's do the good life. Oh, and I slept really good. Although, one thing, I want to go to Siberia tomorrow. I committed to going to it, but it's taken a cold snap. I saw it coming. It's cold. And that's one thing. It's tough to go out there when it's cold, but I may do it anyway. We'll see. It sounded like I'm not. The good life. 7 objectives. Number 1 is to be always ready to die, as I mentioned. To have my family, my things, and my life's work in order. Number 2 is to make good and effective use of time. To live as though I have little time left. That relates to the meatloaf story. 3, to develop and maintain good and sound life principles. That's the 7 and 30 now. Next is to cultivate good emotional reactions. Then to perform good actions. Next, to recognize my true limits and my true opportunities. And then to do one thing at a time and do that thing slowly. Those are my objectives. Now, my 30 principles. Number 1 is the principle of war. To always be fighting against anything that I hold as true. To keep it with a tentative belief. I was engaged in that war yesterday. I'm reading the Nicomachean, I'm probably saying it wrong, Ethics by Aristotle. And particularly I'm in the part about, this is a book of Aristotle's essays, and I'm in the section now about the Nicomachean Ethics. And yesterday there were some passages about that I thought related to free will. And I spent a good deal of time after work walking the dogs when I wasn't watching about meatloaf, dissecting that. And I actually made a video about it. And I think I got the video wrong because I saw a comment from someone that was illustrative of what he was, I think it's a he, was illustrating what they were illustrating what they thought Aristotle was saying. So I may have been off base. Anyway, that was a part of my war on my concept called, my principle called the pirate ride, where I suggested free will is an illusion. I imagine I'll always be fighting that one, as I should. Number two, that was number two, reason. Number three is the homunculus, the idea of a little man living on a rock in the sea. That's me, and that's you too. And we can never cross to one another. In fact, all we can do is wave and shout across the waves. And each of us will one day fall into the sea. And by the way, it's very, very deep, very dark, and there's no coming back from that sea, from that swim. Next is the Anchorhold. Oh, I already did that one. I did it wrong. The homunculus is the little man inside my head, and then the Anchorhold is that rock on the sea. I kind of combined them into one thing there. Next is the home of good and evil, which is a catalog of right and wrong that is in our heads. Next is, after the home of good and evil, is the principle of purpose. Oh, and the home of good and evil, these catalog of right and wrong, they're not eternal. They don't live amongst the stars. They're just opinions that are in our head. And then purpose. Our purpose is to be, my purpose in life is to be a father and a husband and a family man, to be a virtuous man, or virtue is defined as the improvement of the well-being of thinking creatures. Aristotle has a lot to say about virtue too. This is a good book. It's Nicomachean Ethics, however you say it. And then also purpose is to share my book, the content of my book, Going Alone, which records the story that called the story of how I lived and discovered what I call the Great Indifference, or at least apprehended it, and then wrote about it, and then wrote about my the objectives and principles that I'm relating now that I developed as a result. This book is available on Amazon, and it can also be had from my website, goingalone.org, where if you buy it from there, you get a signed copy and some goodies. Next is the atomic principle. Everything is just little pieces, molecules and atoms. Then the principle of nature. Everything in the universe has some nature, and we live better when we seek out and recognize whatever that nature is. Then comes the pirate ride, which I talked about already. The suggestion that free will is an illusion, that we can make any choice we want, but in the end, we never have made any choice other than the one that we actually make. Maturity is the next one, and the sub-principles of wisdom and fortitude. We are mature when we are wise, when we remember our successes and failures, and we're strong in avoiding the failures in the future and applying ourselves towards more successful ends. Next is the social principle. We need each other. Humans need one another. So it's good to pursue ends that further our social connections. Next is the principle of public speaking, and the suggestion of using few words, carefully chosen words, and deliberate words, and to seek to develop a, what's the word? Let's see. Is it felicity? I can't remember now. Excuse me, that's so rude. These darn allergies. I think it's felicity, the ability to choose the right words to convey our meaning. I mean to add that to the book. After public speaking comes temperance, and the sub-principles of suffering, simplicity, and apathy. Temperance is our ability to control our consumption of all things, work and play and food, drink, and our emotions as well. And we suffer when we deny ourselves what we want. And such a life yields a simple life. And apathy is our ability to recognize what is outside of our control and to not be so affected by it. The next principle is the horror show. Life is a non-stop parade of horrors happening to us and around us. As I mentioned earlier, I cited some examples. Then comes the principle called that which must be borne, which is a reminder that we have to bear the things that are tough, like a job that's difficult, or the fact of being ill, maybe even dying, like Meatloaf. Excuse me again. Next comes the Feast of Offal, which is what happens when we've had enough and we spew out into the world our upset and disappointment, and we let everybody know about it, and it affects them and it upsets them, and then they wind up, going overboard themselves with others in minor or major ways. And it's rare that we actually blow up and upset, but we can let it out in bits and pieces and be hurtful to other people. And I try to avoid doing that. And when other people are doing it around me, I will try to be helpful, but I won't consume it, or I'll try not to. Next comes the principle called distraction, and the principle, the great of agency and the great indifference. Distraction suggests that we spend our lives keeping ourselves busy with all the kinds of things that we do in life, whether it's our jobs or our families or our hobbies. And we do that in part because it's fun, in part because it makes life, but also in order to mask the great emptiness of the universe, the yawning, howling indifference that pervades everything around us. I call it the Great Indifference. It's the apparent face of the universe without God. We don't want to see that there isn't any God. There is no evidence of any God, which means that there's no oversight and no guidance and no one to look out for us and care for us, and to most importantly to see to us after our death. Nobody wants to really see that. Well, not nobody. Some people are okay with that. I'm okay with that now. I was pretty okay with it from the beginning too. I wonder why I have to think about that. But anyway, a lot aren't, so we distract. I'm guilty of that too. Okay, agency, great indifference. Next comes after that comes the best seat in the house. To try to be all right with who I am, where I am, and what I'm doing right now, and not want to be anybody else or anywhere else or doing anything else. The next principle is called the Path of Wildness. It's easy to find. The course of a stream, leaves blown in the wind, a beast's track through the brush, and the direction of our first inclination. The Path of Wildness is the way to move forward in life when we're stuck, to decide that we might want to change, to collect facts about the change, to give ourselves time to consider the facts, and then to make a decision. And if we struggle with the decision still, to lean in with our gut, and recognizing that even especially decisions made without complete facts are at risk, and even the decisions with complete facts, as complete as we can think, are at risk. So knowing that we may be headed to a disaster. But at least we're moving forward, right? New life, new stories. Pardon me. I'm sorry about all this. Okay, that was Path of Wildness. Now, the risk of avoiding risk. Life has surface level risks. We're all familiar with them. The risk of not getting an education or a family or a home or saving for retirement. Those kinds of things. Those are the surface level ones. The stuff that everybody tries or recognizes that we should do. and we're encouraged to do. And in fact, there are whole social institutions set up, including things like churches, banks, schools, everything, all set up to help us to further that. So a lot of us do attend to those things. But I want to suggest that there's also a deeper risk that some of us ignore. Some of us are drawn to it. And that's the risk of not attending to our deeper interests in life, or if we feel an urge to find ourselves, so to speak, and have some adventure of life. If we don't attend to that, we may be at risk of feeling like we missed something later. It's a very real risk. I don't think that Meatloaf that probably felt that. He probably just wanted to have more life, although you never know. But he seems to be one who traveled deep and grasped far into himself. I mean, I know nothing about him, but I'm speculating. I recommend to attend to the deep stuff, the deep risks of finding ourselves at an early age, preferably in our 20s, during and after college. And then when the 30s arrive, then if we want to, we can then begin to settle down and attend to the surface level risks. There's still plenty of time by that time. And then we have already cashed in our 20s on adventure. The longer we wait, the harder it gets. And more impossible it gets. In fact, can't have your 20s back for nothing. Even if you pretend and try. Okay, that's enough of the risk of avoiding risk. The next principle is sin and damnation. There are 7 sins in my worldview, and these are credulity, believing things easily, too easily, falsity, believing false things, or being false, basically telling things, being untruthful. Hope, which is a do nothing state of life, just wanting. Hope is all right as long as we couple it with some action, but hope alone is nothing. Although it might help us to identify what we want. It's got to have some motive force. Hope needs to be activated in some way to be useful. Faith, which is the absurd idea that the evidence for the things that we believe is the fact that we believe, which is no evidence at all. It's merely wishful thinking of the most dangerous sort, because it easily gives us the answer we want without any of the work. I mean, we may call it work. We may say, well, we've lived our lives and we've suffered and we've had things and we've had this personal relationship, which in fact is nothing more than the fact of living and more wishful thinking, the personal relationship part. Because we can describe a personal relationship with any deity, especially if we're talking about religion here, with any deity. In fact, that's exactly what happens. Almost everybody that believes in some deity will describe a personal relationship of some sort. So I might have kind of diverted off of faith just a little bit, but faith is that point when you're discussing with someone about the reason that they believe something, and they simply throw up their hands and say, well, it's all a matter of faith. It's just, just because I believe, and they will say, I uphold that as a virtue, because so it says in my book that faith is the evidence of things unseen. It's interesting how that became a virtue of sorts in our world, at least in the Western world. We even have whole institutions called institutions of faith that somehow have a cachet of credibility. Interesting thing. Maybe I'm the one that doesn't get it. Probably. Okay, and then the remaining sins are superstition, which is a category of belief that is labeled but not recognized as something that's a virtue. Not necessarily, although people hold it with interest. It's like having a pet vice that you want to indulge in, that you know is probably something you don't want the neighbors to know you do, but you do it nonetheless. Then comes authority, which is a sin because we believe, because an institution or someone that in a fancy office or with a funny hat or with a long set of letters after their names says that something is true. That doesn't mean, for example, that a PhD doesn't have credibility, but those things should be suspect. They should be, as much as the layman should run those propositions through reasonable scrutiny. So authority needs to be considered, but believing on authority alone is a sin. And then dogma, which is belief based on because some canon of knowledge or supposed wisdom indicates that something is true. And then gossip, which is not a category of truth. It's just a bad habit. And the damnation part comes in because we're damned if we believe things that are untrue, because we're believing things that are untrue. It's not good. It's not good for your health. And then we're also damned when we gossip, because we become bad people. Gossip, of course, being when we're talking about somebody in such a way that we would be embarrassed if they overheard us saying it. That comes back to that earlier principle of public speaking, to use few words, carefully chosen words, deliberate words, and to never gossip. And we know when we're gossiping when we begin talking about someone, and we would be astonished to find that they were just standing behind us listening in. So it's so easy not to gossip. Just don't do that. As those are the sins and the damnation. The next principle is complete oblivion. The suggestion that when we're dead, that's it. There's no afterlife because there is no soul. We will never see our loved ones after we're gone. We'll never have a reunion with them, and we'll never have a chance to make amends. And there'll be no chance for justice after death. So we need to attend to all those things now. Justice, of course, through the sanctioned means of justice. No vigilante justice. Next comes the great life adventure. I kind of spoke about that earlier. That adventure that you have in life that becomes the centerpiece of living, the story of our life, so to speak. It's chilly, cold. That's one of the reasons I'm hesitant to go to the desert tomorrow. It's going to be cold tomorrow. It's good to have that great life adventure early, and then have a little treasure that we can mold and develop and look back on, put it up on the shelf for later. It also, when we get older, especially when we find ourselves in a circumstance like Meatloaf, we don't have as much to regret. We did it. We had the adventure. Even better if we record something about it to share. It's quite satisfactory. It's very, very satisfying, in fact, to have your words instantiated into something, especially in a hardbound edition, to think, well, I'm going, but at least I can leave this on the shelf for my kid to look at later. And maybe, if I'm lucky, her kid. And if I'm really lucky, her kid after that. I don't even know my great grandparents' names, let alone any of their thoughts. Not that that's the goal of life, but what if we lived and had something of useful interest to share? Wouldn't it be great to put it in a little time capsule and send it floating down the river after we drown, after we sink beneath the water? Maybe the Anchorhold thing, after our little rock disappears into the sea with us, a little thing to drift and to bump up against other people's rocks. And that comes to, after complete oblivion, comes the season of philosophy, which is the time to record such things. Simply watch out, because that time comes and that time goes. When the little muse whispers on our ear, it's time to record. And it doesn't have to be writing. It can be photography or painting or drawing or whatever you want to do. You can even dance it away. But do it when the muse speaks, because otherwise the opportunity passes. Next comes the bullseye aim. We try to hit the mark, and we usually miss by some degree. Then the uphill climb. Steady, steady, climb up, up, up. Big, beautiful view up there. Arena and utility. Life is an arena to develop and execute our objectives and principles. And the principles are like tools in a utility belt. We can pull out a little apathy, grab a little temperance, a little bit of public speaking restraint. Oh, I'm not going to gossip. I'll just be quiet. I do that a lot. I'm getting much better at that when I have those awkward moments when people, and there's nothing to say. I'll just choose to be quiet if I don't, or talk about the weather than talk about anybody else. It's almost, gossip has almost become a thing of the past for me. And what a good feeling that is. Likewise, gratuitous speaking. Speaking just to fill the void, to have as a distraction. I'm very, very capable of that. I like to talk. But I'm getting better at not talking for deliberate and good reasons. Okay. Nothing is enough is the next principle. Just a suggestion, a reminder that less is sometimes better, often, usually better, in the long run. And then finally, the principle of fun. I'm working on it. Just reminding myself to have a little fun along the way. I'm sure a meatloaf would approve of that. And not be always so damn serious. Okay, those are my 7 objectives and 30 principles, my good life creed. Now, for the coming day. I'm done with this. So next comes I'll get up and read a chapter of the Bible. And Michael had asked me about why I do that. And I do it, Michael, because I already answered this, but I'll do it for anybody else that might be interested. Why do I read the Bible every day? I'm no longer a Christian. Why would I do that? I do it because, one, it's interesting, really interesting. I really enjoy reading historical texts and stories and mythology. 2, I do it because I like to read old books, and authors from the past would often refer to the Bible stories. Of course, now Aristotle's not going to be referring to the Bible, but other authors do. And 3, I like to know my Bible. It's not very often that I actually talk with believers about their faith. And when I do talk with believers, it's typically Christian believers here in the United States. But when I do, I find it very helpful to know the territory that they're coming from, and to be able to reference passages and chapters and stories and anecdotes, and to have actually thought about it. So that's why I do it. So this morning, I've got it right over there. It's a beautiful thing. It's on a standing little area there. I've got a big wooden holder and a big giant Bible that's got my name on it. It's my uncle gave that to me, and it feels so official. It's like a little library. You just turn the page, and I stand and I read it. And I think I'm in Psalms. I've been in Psalms for a while now. I think it's in 138 maybe. I'll do that. I'll take the dogs for a walk. I'll have my breakfast. When I start my work, I have a meeting in the morning where I need to do a presentation. That presentation is all ready to go. It's going to be a fun presentation. It's more lighthearted than anything else. I even made a PowerPoint for it. That's going to be fun. And I'll rehearse it once, and then we'll have it. It even includes sound effects. And then from there, I'll get busy with. I'll share I'll render the video that I made for the training, the second lesson yesterday. I'll share that with the team, and then I'll perform the third one. I'll have some students to register for the classes, and then I'll just carry on through the day from there. And it should be a pretty good day. And then after that, I'll be free. I'll have tomorrow off, and I'll consider what I'm going to do, how I'm going to make good use of the time tomorrow, which is so fleeting and so fleeting. Okay, I wish you all the best. Make it a good day. Let's all try to be safe and not too safe.